Cleveland, this is for you. We're still here. 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 It comes off. The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship, and it's their second three-peat.
And we're locked in on the road. Locked in. How are you doing, Dave?
Guzzo, I'm doing great, buddy. We are on the road. Right now we are in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
But today was a day for the ages.
Before we even dive in what we did today at American Top Team, before we dive into UFC 235, we're at the hotel, and I have an off-script story/question.
Gosh, we already had our intro ready. We knew what we were going to talk about. We have major topics. We have living legends, Andrei Arlovsky, pitcher of the day with us. But okay, Cuzzo, take it away.
We pride ourselves on being the people's podcast, right? We are what the people are thinking on the other end when they're listening to this. We're not just reading a prompter. We don't have biased opinions. Just unfiltered, the truth, the people's podcast. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. When you're at a hotel, or forget just the hotel, Dave, all honesty, no one's listening, just millions of downloads.
Yeah, it's true.
What temperature do you take your shower?
So is 10 the hottest or 100?
Yeah, like 10's the hottest, and I'm not a cold shower guy. I'm a hot shower guy. What temperature are you at?
8.5, pushing 9.
Okay. Have you tried that shower in there?
Not yet.
Look, Dave, there's a setting on that shower. If there's a scale to 10 where it's probably 20, at least 17, where I put it a little bit, because I like hot showers. So I'm like, okay, let me put it around, like usually towards the end. So I put it there. I'm like, Jesus, like who in the right mind could take a shower at this temperature? We just came from the toughest gym in the world, and I would like to see any of them get in that. Like, I don't know anyone that takes a shower at that temperature.
Coach
this
Billy
could be
Patton,
this could be a danger
Ryan
issue.
Could not coach up anyone at American Top Team
The toughest
to take
guys
a
in the
hot
world.
shower like
This could seriously be a hazard. Like, I feel like this could really be an issue towards someone's health. Like, I felt like it burnt my finger. And I thought to myself, there is no way anybody's taking a shower at that temperature.
I don't know where to go from here. I really don't. I haven't.
I'm like,
in this hot shower.
You know,
the worst thing is I want to go and take a shower tomorrow.
Dave,
and be like, nah, not that hot.
No, listen. Like, if
goal.
you ever when you go to like the Mexican food restaurants and they have all the peppers, and you're like, why in the world is there a pepper this hot? Like, it's just not even enjoyable. That's the mode at that shower.
So it's ghost pepper shower.
Yeah.
That's
and
what
I
you're
actually
telling me
tried
right
a
now.
ghost pepper. I cried. They had to get me milk. I almost threw out. Like, that's what that shower. That's the ghost pepper of showers.
So Edison Barbosa, Thiago Alves, all that's
Nothing.
put on the back burner
Nothing.
instead of your hot shower story. That's the first thing you want the people to hear.
I honestly rather get knocked out by all of them than take that shower.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, let's get into what a
Yeah, you
terrific day
can
we had.
download this podcast if you still want to listen to us, guys, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and Spotify.
Couldn't have said it any better. So we're at American Top Team. We're with Pete White. We're with Taylor White from Pete White Boxing and MMA. The next big thing, man, what an amazing gym. We got to see and speak with our friend Billy Patton, Greg Hardy, all these terrific fighters. We just mentioned Thiago Alves, Edson Barbosa, Andrei Arlovsky. What an amazing... You're still laughing, aren't you?
I am, especially because you said Arlovsky, and we have a funny Arlovsky story.
You want to tell that one?
I could try right now, but oh my gosh, with the hot shower and the Arlovsky story.
Who was he racing?
Oh my gosh. All right, so here's the Arlovsky story. We're there the whole day. in and out, probably around 6 to 8 hours of American Top Team. We're seeing classes of pro fighters. Honestly, Edison Barbosa, we got a picture with him. We talked with him. He's really excited for his Justin Gaethje fight. He's practicing leg kicks. He's practicing all kinds of stuff. We don't want to tell you details for right now because the fight coming up.
Yeah.
Anyways, but there's multiple professional fighters training, working out. It's the greatest facility I've ever seen.
State of the art.
Yeah, MMA gym. I call it MMA heaven. Grapplers, wrestlers, striking. They have a legit 30-foot octagon in there. Just everything, right, Max? It was the greatest gym we ever been to.
And, the staff was incredibly nice. Great atmosphere.
It was. And we'll get more into that. But the story is, so there's a whole backside of the gym, and they work usually, it's mostly on cardio, strength and conditioning, that kind of thing. And they have a great Bam Bam, right? He's the trainer, and he won Trainer of the Year in Florida, MMA 2018. We saw him actually in Miami just a couple of days ago, so we saw him again. It was pretty funny. But, okay. So it's late at night, and Andrei Arlovsky is doing, you guys seen it in all the hype videos and all the MMA embeddeds. Guys would put like a 45-pound on like a kind of like a cart or a wheel.
It's a sled, and you push the sled.
Yeah, and you push the sled.
Yeah.
And they were doing that. Other professional fighters were pushing the sled. Andrei Arlovsky they put not one 45-pounder, not two 45-pounder, 3 45-pounders on his sled. But he wasn't pushing it like a normal human being.
And he wasn't even just pulling it like a normal human being.
Or a monster. He had this contraption that you tie around your head and you drag it, or you walk, and you're kind of using your neck muscles.
Yeah, it
and
strengthens your neck.
Your neck and your shoulder, just the whole thing. And he's literally carrying weight around his neck.
Yeah.
It was insane. We were just watching him walk back and forth. So, the moral of the story, here's the punchline, guys. There's, probably goes for 300 feet. On the way back, other fighters were going around 30 to 40 feet and then running back with the 45-pounder pushing the sled. Somehow, Arlovsky and another fighter meets around like 25 feet on the way back. And it's kind of funny because they both kind of just peek at each other and they see each other, that they're at the same spot. And if you know an MMA fighter, and we do, they're probably some of the most competitive people in the whole entire world. So, Arlovsky and another fighter, they match eyes, and they take off. So one fighter is pushing 45 pounds in the sled, just pushing it normal, like a normal human being, like you and I are taking out trash. Arlovsky's got 135 pounds around his head, and he's running 4.8 running a 40. It was just the funniest thing, and Andrei Arlovsky won.
Yeah, it's funny, but kind of scary. It's like, I don't know anybody that can do that, for one, and two, after that, he kept going. It wasn't like a sprint and, okay, I'm done, take it off. Like, Dave, we were there for a while, and like our legs were getting sore for how much we were standing, and Andre's still pulling the sled.
Yeah, it was incredible, guys. Like I said, we saw so many classes, so many coaches and teachers teaching. Thiago Alves, one of the legends in the sport, one of the greatest welterweights fighters of all time. He was there helping the younger generation improve their skills. A couple of the guys, Edison Barbosa, one of the best knockout finishes in the history of UFC.
Yep.
He was there. He's really getting ready for Justin Gaethje. He told us he's excited. He wants a war with Justin Gaethje, so he's just very happy for this fight. He says his body feels great. Just what a tremendous day. Greg Hardy was awesome. The funny thing about Greg Hardy is we left and we're like, wow, guys, Greg Hardy's bigger than we thought. Like, he is humongous.
Yeah, Greg was humongous. But what the other impressive thing was the dedication from the fighters. Of course, like when you get full-time fighters who are obviously competing in the UFC, or it may be the PFL, it may be Bellator, the dedication, like Greg Hardy's got millions in the bank. but he's choosing to be there day and night. Like that sacrifice is not something you could teach. That's dedication. That's a love for the game. That's a just something down deep that you're driving to be the best in the world, and that's just something you can't teach. It's a drive. So that was extremely impressive. And then just seeing our peeps, Taylor White, competing with the best in the world and learning some of the best wrestling, it was incredible. Dave, UFC 235 is coming up. Arguably one of the best cards ever assembled in UFC history. We have John Jones, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, defending his belt against Anthony Smith. We also have Ben Askren making his long-awaited debut in the UFC against the former welterweight champion Robbie Lawler. We also have Tyron Woodley, who's defending the welterweight championship, teammates of Ben Askren. They both have fought out of American Top Team. They also go to Rufus Sport, fighting a tough fight in Usman. And then we have Zabit fighting. We have Cody Garbrandt fighting. And then he's fighting someone out of American Top Team.
Yeah, Tisha Torres is also fighting, guys, in this card. American Top Team, badass fighter against, I'm going to butcher her name, but I'm going for it. Xing Yang, something like that, which I date stamped it. It was around 8 months ago, was her first debut in the UFC. And I called her out as being a future world champion. And she's been undefeated in the UFC. I kind of watched past video on her. I just liked her tenacity. She kind of is like a Colby Covington of a female version. Just she moves straight. She Korean zombie-like.
Yep.
Moves straight, fights, punches. I just love her style. I kind of want to be right, but I'm also rooting for Tisha Torres, the little tornado. I'm kind of falling in love with this American Top Team, Cuzzo.
Yeah, and well, we always say, if you're around successful people who have the same goals you do, you're going to thrive and you're going to get better. So that's what they've built over there at American Top Team. So let's dive into UFC 235. We have it on fightbananas.com where we gave our predictions with the Professor John Radford, but we are on the Locked In Sports Podcast right now, available on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, YouTube. Make sure you click the YouTube link. Locked In with 2N Sports Podcast on any social media platform. But enough plugging away. I'm not talking about Fit Meals. I'm not talking about Magna Loops. I'm not talking about Anstel Nutrition. We're talking about UFC 235. Do you want to? What fight would you like to start off with?
Let's start with the main event and work down if other things go at you. Because sometimes we go long, and I don't want to. I want to give the main event its due in the co-main event, right?
Right.
So let's talk about it. John Jones, the greatest in-ring competitor in UFC history, hands down the greatest light heavyweight of all time. He just won the championship kind of back, but he just won the championship a couple months ago. And now he's fighting Anthony Smith, Lionheart, another young competitor from the light heavyweights. Has never had this success before, has never been in a main event of a pay-per-view. So this is a big stage for him. First of all, let's start there. Is the stage too big for the Lionheart?
I don't think it's too big for him. I just think he's fighting probably the greatest fighter of all time.
Sure.
And John has Anthony Smith winning, John Radford. And I'm not like, of course, that's a bold take, right? That's a hot take. But in MMA, anything can happen. So even though it's a hot take, anything can happen. You're not going to see the Suns defeat the Warriors 4 games in a 7-game series. Like, that's just not going to happen. But in one game, you never know what can happen, and that's what the MMA world is about. Anything can happen.
Sure. And if I can kind of just jump on that is, Anthony Smith is the number one contender for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not like John Jones is fighting the 62nd light heavyweight in the world that has 0 shot. Anthony Smith can put you away with one overhand right. He could. He has power. And he's been dominant for the last year and a half. He's confident. He's got momentum. So anything can happen. But, guys, sometimes in life, simple is just, it's solid. Don't overthink it. John Jones is the greatest in-ring competitor of all time. I'm going with the great John Jones.
I am, too. And there's, 3 big reasons. One is I think he really is the greatest fighter when it comes to distance and range. He has the longest reach in UFC history. I believe it's 84 inches. And when you combine that with his athletic ability and his fighting IQ, controlling the distance and range is a huge factor when fighting someone with big knockout power. The second thing is his IQ, like I said, but his strategic game plan. Every time he fights, it reminds me of George St. Pierre, but I think he does it even better because he's more well-rounded. He's dangerous on the feet, and he's equally dangerous on the ground. I think John Jones always puts together the best game plan, and if the last fight with Gus doesn't prove it, I don't know what does. After a 5-round war the first time, then the second time he's like, you know what, I'm not going to box Gus. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep my range. Then he finishes Gus in the second round. I think he's going to put together a great game plan, utilize his range, and I think his experience is the last big factor.
Yeah,
because when he stuns, I think he will clip Anthony Smith, and Anthony Smith may do something because he's never been on that level before. He may panic and shoot for a takedown, and that's why I locked in a Darce choke in the second round. I may be wrong on that. I think John Jones wins, but for some reason I see a Darce choke. Hey, those are my 3 big factors.
Great factors. It's a good call by you. I have a TKO.
Yeah.
I'm thinking clipping him and then just kind of like a little ground and pound. The referee stops the fight.
Right.
But yeah, guys, it's John Jones. It's as simple as that. Let's move to the co-main event. Another title fight for the welterweight championship, which this might be the most intriguing fight to me. Usman, undefeated in the octagon. Woodley is, we talked about it before, we think one of the most underrated welterweight champions of all time, one of the most underrated champions in the UFC. It's a great matchup. It's two really solid wrestlers, great bases. Woodley, I believe, has more power, has more punch, knockout power. But, hey, Usman hasn't lost yet, and it's kind of, there's something there until you receive your first loss. So I'm interested. I have Tyron Woodley winning. He is the champ, and sometimes I'm not overthinking it. I think Jones and Woodley retains. So that's kind of my 2 cents. That's the start it.
No, those are really good points you mentioned. Kind of like John Jones. I don't think Tyron Woodley's as good as John Jones overall. Like just their aspect. We're comparing an all-time great. But Woodley's very, very intelligent with his game plan, with his strategy, his fighting IQ, and he's another fighter. And not all champions do this. A lot of champions are very talented, and that pure ability and talent is able to win them multiple fights. But Tyron Woodley's one of those guys who puts together a strategic game plan that benefits him, and he fights his fight. That's why he's sometimes in a boring fight, because that's his fight. That's what he wants to do. He's not going to let Damian Maia take him down, but he's also not going to overcommit. He fought his fight and won. I think he does the same thing with Usman. I think Usman presents a lot of problems, but I think Woodley presents even more problems to Usman. I think he has power that can knock out Usman at any given time, and again, experience. He's fought tough fighters at the championship level at the biggest stage. So I have Woodley winning, but it is an interesting fight. I think Usman has a very good chance at it, but I think I have Woodley with the knockout around the third round.
Yeah, that's a great call. So 2 title fights. We have both of the champions retaining. All right, so let's go to the third fight. To me, it could be the main event in any UFC across the nation. To me, this is last fight most intriguing. The first fight we talked about was probably the biggest implications, just kind of history of the John Jones factor. This fight has the most buzz. This fight is the most wow factor, questions. Ben Askren, the best fighter who's never fought in the UFC, kind of in his prime right now, still undefeated. We got Robbie Ruthless Lawler. He dominated the welterweight division a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, had an unbelievable runs, great fight with Johnny Hendricks. He had great fights with Roy McDonald. He's ruthless. He's one of the most entertaining fighters to watch.
I see what you did there.
You like that? So they matched them up. Dana White, Sean Shelby, the matchmakers for UFC, did a fantastic job with this fight. I love it. I cannot wait. Cuzzo, you take it away, and I'll jump on what you think can happen, will happen, and why.
Before I give my prediction, I have a bold take here. For the hardcore MMA fans, it doesn't apply to you. For you and I, it doesn't apply. To the general public who look at records and they look at names based off those records, this is going to shock them. Ben Askren is going to be disappointing to fans. That's my bold take. People are going to label him as boring after this fight. You and I won't, and a lot of hardcore MMA fans and fighters will appreciate what he does. But the general public that isn't as far into it, they watch it when Conor fights. They watch it if Brock fights for some reason. They watch it if John Jones fights. They're going to be bored with Ben Askren and say, what's all the hype about? That's my first locked in with that. My other locked in is going to be Ben Askren. I believe, even though Robbie does have a legitimate shot after all the things you just said with the knockout power and the experience, Ben Askren is going to control every aspect of this fight. He's going to avoid enough damage and completely just control Robbie. I don't think he finishes him. I think it's just a unanimous decision. He doesn't take any punishment, but he controls Robbie the whole fight, and that's why people are going to think he's boring, but he's dominant and he's undefeated.
Well said.
Thank you.
That's kind of exactly where I was going. We said this off air, and I'll say it now. And you, when I said this, you're like, yeah, Dave, good point. I just think Robbie Lawler so far going into this fight is very underrated. They're just, because all the buzz is around Askren, and he's just not getting the love he deserves, and he's just not, guys, he's dangerous. He's ruthless. He could TKO Ben at any time in this fight. But with all that being said, yeah, Askren is the more dominant wrestler. Askren is someone who doesn't, he doesn't like to get hit. He dodges those big blows. He's going to smother. I don't think he's going to be overwhelming to Robbie Lawler. I think he's going to, he's been there before. He's been around. He's been fighting since he's a teenager.
Yeah.
So I kind of have it as a UD as well. He could stop him with the ground and pound, though. He could late in the rounds if the judge are like, hey, Robbie's just getting kind of hit and bang a little bit. It's not nothing like he's knocked out by any means. It's just like, you're just not doing enough for me. So they could stop it if they want to give Ben a little juice, a little gas to the rocket launcher. But Ben Askren should win this fight. He's undefeated for a reason. But I would not be shocked if ruthless Robbie Lawler gives us something to talk about after this.
That'd be fun. It would be interesting. Last thing, my last quick point on it is Ben Askren. He's undefeated. This is his UFC debut. For those of you that don't know, he's probably one of the greatest fighters that has never fought into the UFC, obviously until now. If he is to lose, it will be a huge blemish. Even though it's just one loss, it will make us question every win he's had. And it may not be fair, but to have an undefeated record in your first fight in the UFC you lost, that will raise questions. Fair or not?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely fair, especially it's against I can argue that Robbie Lawler is Ben Askren's toughest matchup to date.
That's a good point.
His toughest matchup ever, so there's no harm.
Biggest name.
And there's never harm losing it to Robbie Lawler. There's never been harm losing it to, a Hall of Famer type fighter. But it's kind of like what the media says about how, the hype will stop. So it's a great point. It's definitely Ben needs to win this fight more than Robbie Lawler because Robbie can get big-time fights whenever, and he's just so popular and so polarizing that if he loses this fight but wins 2 or 3 in a row, especially by, fantastic fashion, he'll be right in the title picture. If Askren loses this fight, I don't ever see him kind of getting out of this to fight for a big-time title. But that's just my 2 cents.
Just to let you guys know, my hand is still hot from the shower. I'm just letting you know it's stinging actually at the moment. Just want to make sure that doesn't simmer down because my hand is in pain. But going forward, we just talked about Ben Askren, we just talked about Tyron Woodley, and we just talked about John Jones. So we're 3 for 3 right now in agreement. We have another big fight. We have a couple big fights coming up. You already mentioned Zhang, that's been kind of you're locked in, and I'm in agreement. I think she wins that fight as well.
Okay, wow. She's an underdog too.
Yeah, I think she wins it. I think
4 for 4.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to go into the Zabit Stevens fight.
Just real quick, let's finish the main card. Cody Garbrandt or Pedro?
Cody Garbrandt. Yeah, and I think Pedro out of American Top Team, right?
Yep.
So obviously a great camp.
Yep.
But I think Cody after the tough 2 losses, it's always like what they say with the football team after a tough loss or a high win, look out for that team. After a tough loss, you got to watch out.
Yeah. And there's no shame losing to TJ Dillashaw. He's he's fine. I think Cody will win this fight too. All right, so wow, we are 5 for 5. So yeah, there's the prelim headliner with Zabit versus Jeremy Stevens.
Okay, here it is, guys. I think this is Zabit's breakthrough fight. I think this is the biggest name he'll have as a win. And I'm telling you, I know his ranking may not be number 4 or number 5 right now, but this fight will make him fight. Like, the next fight he fights after this will be, like, his coming out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this fight will make him fight maybe the loser of Brian Ortega and Aldo type of thing. Like, it gets higher and higher, and this is the start of it all. Because his wins are extremely impressive. But to do it with somebody of Jeremy Stevens' caliber, that's what will put him beyond the map. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I kind of agree. If he wins this fight, his next fight, I feel like will be a main event of like one of those ESPN cards or a co-main event of the pay-per-view. It's like, hey, this is like almost a number 1 contender fight for you. And let's see how he finishes him, too. If he wins by unanimous decision, and it's not flashy, that, of course, will hurt him. But if he gets a crazy submission or, you know, Jeremy Stevens has got big power in his hand. So if he can somehow, with a counterpunch or you know, by a really great way of a TKO or knockout, Zabit, he is the next name. I feel like Darren Till in the welterweights. It was Stylebender in the middleweights. And now here in the featherweights, it's Zabit.
Yeah, I really do. Guys, UFC 235, Max and Dave here from the Locked In Sports Podcast. If it's your first time listening, we cover all sports, but we do love our MMA. Hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure you don't take too hot of showers. Other than that, you download and subscribe to the Locked In Podcast. That's pretty much the main thing.
I think now everyone that's listened to this show will always think of you with hot showers.
Dude,
that's like a thing.
Dude, I love hot showers. That is boiling water in there. But boiling water. I'm like really willing to test the temperature.
All right, I'm not going to wait for tomorrow, guys. If we can end this podcast, I want to try this shower. I'm in. I'm doing it right now.
All right. Like always, guys,
stay
locked in.
Become a Chicago Bull.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. It's either that or the Knicks, but for some reason the Bulls does have a nice ring to it. And I'll say very quickly before we get to the Zach LaVine interview here, one thing I was impressed with Zach LaVine was the way he looked at the game. He, a lot of players in these locker rooms, and it's no slight or disrespect towards them, but a lot of them do have egos, and a lot of them are about themselves and their stats. And talking to Zach LaVine, not only did he have so much self-awareness, you could tell he's all about winning. And I think that gets overshadowed because of how bad the Bulls are right now. But like you said, with a player like Zion, for Zach LaVine to have an opportunity to be a Robin, I think people would see that a little bit more as well.
I love it. I have a locked in. If you don't have anything else, I would love to get to it because I know people are dying to hear how funny Zach LaVine is. But if you got anything else, I'll talk for another 4 hours.
No, go ahead and give your locked in. And then, Zach LaVine hints about the next dunk contest. So go ahead, Dave.
All right, right before I'll say that is another show I just want to talk about for 30 seconds, and I remember you were super into it. I haven't heard anything back from you, and the new season started, and it's incredible. The Blacklist. Are you caught up with that?
Oh, God. We love The Blacklist. Olivia and I watch it, but we've stopped for a while because we got into Shark Tank. We got The Walking Dead came back on, obviously the NFL postseason, but it is still on our list. I'm still into it. It's just kind of on the list.
Okay, so definitely get back into it. Like I said, there's a huge, crazy thing happen at the end of the season you're on. And now Susie and I, we're like 6-7 episodes into the next season. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. They kind of picked up right where they could have went right or left, and they went the right way. They got Dunkin' Donuts right in front of them. Life is good.
Nice. Did they subscribe to the Locked In podcast on any podcast platform?
What are you talking about? Of course. You're talking about Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, or even Spotify?
Wow. That's a good podcast right there.
Best in the world. Mitchell Jamali said it himself.
But what's your locked in?
All right. My locked in, I am so intrigued with the East. In the East playoff bracket and the series, there's so many teams, and it's
LeBron's not in the East anymore. Hey, LeBron might not even be in the playoffs anymore. I just love, there's so many teams, if 4 teams came out of the East, you wouldn't be totally shocked, and I just love that. But I'm going to kind of put some stock in one team, and I just don't think, as being a 1 seed and having the MVP on it, they're almost going underneath the radar, and that is, of course, Fear the Deer, the Greek Freak, the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm going to lock something in, Max. The Milwaukee Bucks will be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I got to see who they're going to play. We'll maybe come back to this and see if they're going to win the whole freaking thing. But they will not even win 1 playoff series. They will win 2 playoff series. The first time the Bucks will make it to the Eastern Conference Finals in around over 35 years. And it's happening this year because Dave the Wave locked that in.
Since Luol Slender. I think so.
You might be right. It's like 35, 36 years. It's Google image that.
A.K.A. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the GOAT. No, that's a good locked in because mine was actually, we're cousins, guys. We did not talk about this before. We usually do talk about our locked ins, but I had one, and it was about Giannis. I owe him an apology. Way back, check the archives, locked in, like we said, on any podcast platform, download and subscribe. I said Ben Simmons has higher potential than the Greek Freak. And I'm still a Ben guy, and I still think this league can be his. But I am going to give it back to Giannis because there's one thing I'm very impressed about with Giannis is his mentality and his willingness to keep putting in the work and getting better. There's like rumbles, and like you always say, when there's smoke, there's fire. Ben really didn't work on his jump shot over the summer. Ben kind of this, Ben kind of that. Giannis, and like he's dating a Jenner or whatever the case may be, Giannis, I've never heard anything other than he wants to be the best basketball player in the world. And to me, that is such a valuable thing in a young player who may be the best player in the world. Giannis, I've seen leaps and bounds in his improvement. His jump shot is getting better. It's still not where it needs to be, but he's shooting the 3 and he's hitting them occasionally, so it requires the defense to come out and guard him on the perimeter. But like you said, he has Chris Middleton, who was an all-star, but he's not a superstar by any means. And with this unit, the new coaching staff really seems to fit with him as well. I love this Milwaukee team, but I think Giannis not only proved me wrong, I think he's the top 3, top 4 best player in the world right now. And yes, I still have LeBron 1, although I know it's not a hot take. It's a hot take at the moment. I think Kevin Durant's still above him just because of his shooting ability, and it's kind of hard to put him over Curry. But I think Giannis is better than Harden. I think Giannis is better than Kawhi. Frankly, Giannis is the best player in the East, hands down, and that's locked in.
Because Giannis has something that Derek Jeter, Tom Brady, Tim Duncan have. And the Greek Freak is an unbelievable, talented, once-in-a-lifetime generational player. He just puts his head down and works harder than the next guy. And that is just something you just can't teach. It's just this unique skill that he has to want to win, will himself to win, will his team to win. No BS, nothing at all. Giannis wants to win basketball games. And that you just can't teach. And that's why I got the Bucks winning 2 playoff series.
Especially to go alongside his unbelievable, unique athleticism, his 12-foot wingspan probably. But yeah, what a great episode, Dave. We've been teasing this all episode long. Zach LaVine from the Chicago Bulls. The All-Star game is in Chicago next year, so he kind of hints about that. Do you have any last words, Dave?
Cuzzo, like always, man, don't drink and drive. Zach LaVine, great interview. Cuzzo, I'll see you soon, man.
All righty, my man. Have a great one. We have a big week ahead, so make sure you get your rest.
Absolutely, will do. I'll see you soon.
Yes, sir.
Zach, I feel like your athleticism is unique, and you utilize it very well. How has your athleticism helped you with other aspects of your game?
I feel like it helps, definitely with shot creation.
Right.
I can get my shot off, and then being able to go a hole and create and find other people, or hanging in the air and making tough baskets. I can get on the break, pretty much run by somebody. So.
And I have to ask this just because you and Aaron Gordon are arguably the greatest dunk contest of all time. What were your thoughts on this year's dunk contest, and do you ever plan on competing in it again?
It was good, man. It's in Chicago next year, so never know.
Right.
See how my legs feel.